Hey, it's Chris. I put this video together using a hybrid MacBook and iPad sidecar setup, with Jarvis, my AI writing assistant, open on the Mac and my research and notes open over on the iPad. It's a powerful setup and I want you to remember it because it's gonna figure prominently later in this video. But first, here's an interesting conundrum. The M1 iPad Pro is undisputedly the best tablet ever created. And yet, there are some Apple fans who feel disappointed by what it can do. How is that possible? Maybe Apple's marketing has left people a little confused as to what an iPad is. What is a computer? Or your idea of a computer? Or a tablet? Or a Pro tablet? Or maybe we as consumers have simply read Apple wrong. Maybe we thought that Apple was building us the mobile primary device of our dreams and kind of developed unrealistic expectations as for what an iPad Pro should do. All right, now follow me here. In recent years, the iPad Pro and MacBook lineups have come to overlap enough that we've come to expect more overlap every time a new iPad Pro is launched. Even so, both devices still remain distinct because you can still say there's an iPad Pro and there's a MacBook. And there's still certain tasks that are only doable on either one device or the other. So yes, there is a lot of overlap between the devices, but why isn't there more? In fact, lots of people have been asking why seemingly obvious features aren't being borrowed from the Mac and given to the iPad Pro. We're at the point where it's almost become fashionable to ask why Apple seemingly won't let the iPad Pro become even more Pro.
It feels like the only thing holding this iPad back is Apple protecting the Macs a little bit.
To paraphrase Linus Sebastian's logic, Apple is a company that can spend nearly $20 billion a year on R&D. Clearly, they have the resources to bring any existing Mac feature to the iPad Pro. Therefore, when seemingly obvious features don't show up, it must be because Apple decided not to include them, not that Apple couldn't include them. To truly understand what Apple's trying to do with the iPad Pro, we gotta go back to 2010, to the launch of the very first iPad, Steve Jobs' last great keynote. But before we do, let me just remind you, if you're liking this video, why not hit subscribe?
Everybody uses a laptop and or a smartphone. And the question has arisen lately, is there room for a third category of device in the middle?
Steve knew that Apple couldn't just make a new device and hope people were going to buy it. That new device had to actually serve a purpose.
If there's going to be a third category of device, it's going to have to be better at these kinds of tasks than a laptop or a smartphone. Otherwise, it has no reason for being.
Meaning it had to handle the key tablet tasks better than a high-end expensive laptop on one end, and it also had to be more compelling than a cheap netbook on the other.
The problem is, netbooks aren't better at anything. They're slow, they have low-quality displays, and they run clunky old PC software.
So, when you think about an iPad, you think mobile, fast, high-quality touchscreen experience. Basically the opposite of something like a Chromebook. That's the essence of the iPad. Now, fast forward 5 years to 2015, to the launch of the first iPad Pro. The first iPad Pro was still a mobile, fast, high-quality touchscreen experience, except it got even faster and had an even better display. It launched alongside the first Apple Pencil and a smart keyboard, and that keyboard really did a lot to move the iPad Pro in a more Mac-like direction. By now, in 2021, we've seen a total of 5 iPad Pros, and with just one exception, they've all improved upon that core iPad experience, mobile, fast, high-quality touchscreen experience, by doing two things: adding a faster chip and somehow improving the display. If you pay attention to the intro video for the M1 iPad Pro, you'll notice that the M1 chip and the Liquid Retina HDR display are the headline features. They're the first two to be shown. As the iPad Pro's matured, it's picked up some features that you're not gonna find on a Mac. Face ID, LiDAR, a more advanced Apple Pencil, 5G, center stage, and home screen widgets, among other things. And these are the kinds of features that help the iPad Pro stand out. At the same time, there's been some Mac hand-me-downs as well. USB-C and Thunderbolt, trackpad and mouse support, for example. And these are the kinds of features that do nothing but blur the line between the two different devices. But when the overlap really went into overdrive was when the iPad Pro got the M1 chip. The same chip found inside 4 different Macs. The M1 is a component that isn't just Mac-like, it's Mac-identical. With this level of hardware overlap, it's no wonder that people began to assume Apple would bring more software features over from the Mac to the iPad. Things like real external monitor support, pro-level Mac apps, support for multiple users, and more capable file management and multitasking. Why? Because with the M1, it no longer appeared like there was a technical reason why these Mac features couldn't cross the divide to also be enjoyed by iPad users. Which then begs the question, without a technical barrier, does Apple have a good rational, logical, or philosophical reason? Or are they just, a business trying to make people buy more than one device? When Steve introduced that first iPad, he said it had to have a purpose.
If there's going to be a third category of device, it's going to have to be better at these kinds of tasks.
And for an iPad, even an iPad Pro, to be able to do some things better than a laptop, it can't be a laptop, because then it could only ever be the same, never different, much less better. Here we are today, over a decade since the first iPad launched, and Apple still offers phones, tablets, and laptops. And I don't think they ever envisioned somebody owning just one. Back in the day, Steve's slide never said, here's 3 options. Pick one. Just like owning an iPhone doesn't preclude you from owning a Mac doesn't preclude you from owning an iPad, or vice versa, even if some people do wish that was the case. Now, it's true that out there in the big old wide world, there are people who enjoy getting by with just a Mac or just an iPad. But it's just as true that owning both a Mac and an iPad can be better than owning either or, as long as a person is willing to pay for those benefits. Remember, Apple's MO has never been to produce the cheapest thing.
They're not better than a laptop at anything, they're just cheaper. They're just cheap laptops.
But it is known for its technological panache. Now, back at WWDC, Apple debuted macOS Monterey, which came with a really interesting feature, universal control, which counts as at least one interesting reason to have both a Mac and an iPad on the same desk. With universal control, you can set an iPad down next to a Mac, move the Mac cursor over to the side of the screen, it'll jump over to the Mac, and then you can control both devices with one keyboard and mouse. But you can also drag and drop files between the two. No email, no Dropbox, no AirDrop required. And if that's not cool, I don't know what is. Plus, a person that owned both could take advantage of Procreate, an excellent iPad-only app that really makes use of that Apple Pencil, and they could also take advantage of Final Cut Pro, a Mac-only app. Personally, I can't wait to try universal control, but I'm already loving Sidecar. To get myself in the right headspace for creating this video, I traded out my ultra-wide setup for a dual MacBook Pro and iPad Pro setup. And to be honest, I felt really productive. Since I was focused on writing, I had my favorite writing app, Jarvis, open on the Mac. I'll link it in the description for you. And it was great being able to detach the iPad, make some handwritten notes, making use of my paper-like screen protector, reattach the iPad, reference those handwritten notes while still having Jarvis open, while feeling like I literally had everything I needed right at my fingertips. And here's the kicker. I can pack this setup up, take it with me, and recreate it literally anywhere. And that's not something that I can do with my ultra-wide. Now, would I, personally, rather have one primary device that's a bit more capable than either my MacBook Pro or my iPad Pro on its own? Honestly, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. But at the same time, I can't get that quote out of my head that says, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. If money talks, then soak in the fact that Apple's iPad business took in revenues of over $7 billion here recently in July. That means the consumers are voting with their wallets to let Apple know that they still see room for a third category of devices. And as long as that's the case, I wouldn't be in a rush to expect Apple to turn the iPad Pro into anything other than the best tablet in the world. Oh man, that was a little bit different of a video, wasn't it? Let me know what you guys thought. It was more of a video essay format, and actually I really enjoyed it. Leave me some feedback. Also, don't forget, I've got a podcast. I'd love for you to join me on it. It's linked up down below, and I'm also giving away, basically every month, I've decided, a HomePod Mini. And if you want to enter that, the details are also linked up down in the description. Otherwise, make sure you're subscribed so you can catch more of these videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.